Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 22 playthrough of the New York Yankees. We are at the start of the 2028 offseason. We've led the Yankees for 7 years as general manager now since we took over after the 2021 season. First two seasons had losing records and were out of the playoffs as we tried to revamp the roster completely. Last 5 seasons, we have won the American League East and been in the playoffs, but only one world championship to show for it. Still better in our first 7 seasons in terms of winning championships than Cashman was in his last 7, actually much longer than that, his last decade plus. But need to win some more championships to make this all worthwhile. The big change in the playthrough for us has been that after that second season, the Steinbrenners sold the team to new ownership, and new ownership is a lot less willing to spend money. You can see one of our goals for this coming season is to cut the payroll from its current $205 million to $190 million. I know that sometimes these goals are not all that important, particularly if you're winning, and we intend to be, a pretty successful team. But by the same token, when they made us go through a similar exercise early in their ownership of the team, after we cut the payroll down, they just let us go nuts for a few years, which helped result in that World Series title. So I think that we may try to play ball with them a little bit and get $15 million off of the payroll. We definitely have a few options available to help us do that. Looking at our salaries right now, we have option years to figure out on Sean Manaea and Sean Murphy. We are going to almost certainly let both of them go. Manaea is now 36, going to be 37 by the start of next season. Had a decent run for us, especially in his first few years. You can see, he was injured his first year, but then his second year with us was 13-11, followed by a 13-7 season, followed by a 10-4 season. But he's gotten more and more injury prone, and more importantly, less and less strong as a pitcher as he's aged. You can see last year he had a 6.04 ERA, 79 ERA plus. Our option for him is for $13 million this coming season for a 37-year-old who's fragile and also really hasn't been in our rotation regularly, only 6 starts last year. That seems like a luxury that even the Yankees just can't afford. And then our other team option is going to be on Sean Murphy. Brought him on several years ago, signed him to an extension to be our starting catcher. He is now our backup behind Alvarez. Good defensive catcher, would be a great backup, but at $5.5 million, I don't think that's the right way for us to go. If we look at Scranton Wilkes-Barre, we have Adam Kerner, a 30-year-old, a bit below average as an offensive player, but solid defensive catcher who has 3 option years left. And we also have Anthony Siegler, a little younger, 29 years old down there. Similar offensive profile, probably a little bit below average offensively, but also a good, solid, not great, but a solid defensive catcher. And Siegler, similarly, has 3 option years left. So the thought is to save some money. We will have either Kerner or Siegler up as the backup to Francisco Alvarez next season. So we'll try to trade both Murphy and Manaea, see if they have any value. Those options have any value to somebody. Probably not too much, but we may get a player about to hit arbitration or with 1 year left on their contract that might be more useful for us to have. So that will free up a little bit of cash. The other decision we need to make is actually going to sound like a weird one, I think, for the Yankees. But Alexander Vargas, the young second baseman, is set to make potentially over $4 million this year in arbitration. You can see he's a league average hitter at best, probably a little below average. He's an excellent defensive second baseman, and you can see he's off to a nice start in his career with us. Put up his first better than 100 OPS plus last season with a 108. But he's still, like I said, probably a little below average offensively, good defensive second baseman. And we also have in the system Nick Gonzalez, who was our starter at second base several years ago. Much better offensive profile and is a competent defensive second baseman. Certainly not a plus second baseman, but not really a minus either, I don't think. And we also have Anthony Volpe, who is definitely a weaker hitter, particularly not a lot of home run power, but a great presence in the clubhouse, and again, a competent second baseman. So the thought is maybe to potentially save the $4 to $5 million we'd probably be paying Vargas in arbitration to let Volpe and or more likely Gonzalez take back the second base position this year. And we might be able to get something interesting for Vargas in a trade. The other real big decision facing us this offseason is what to do with Aaron Judge. We had exercised his final year $30 million option last season. He had a solid year for us. 28 homers, 184 ribbies, 113 was his OPS plus, not his number of ribbies, as I got a little bit ahead of myself. But a good solid season. You can see still definitely has plus power, still a very good defensive right fielder. But he's fragile. And he is looking for 16 to 17 million a year for the next 5 seasons, which would push him into his 40s. Definitely don't want to go there. The question with him is kind of similar to what we did with Xander Bogaerts last year. We could make him a $18.9 million qualifying offer. Kind of hope that someone takes him, and I think there's a better chance that someone will sign Judge than there was with Bogaerts last year. Bringing him back for almost $19 million for one season would make it more difficult for us to get under that $190 million salary goal that ownership has. But although he's fragile, he was healthy last year, doesn't have any lingering issues right now, could certainly use his bat in the lineup. But if we don't end up bringing him back, or if we make him the offer and then he signs somewhere else with free agency, would obviously free up some money for us and likely give us an interesting draft pick or two back, depending on where he signs and what he signs for. So that's kind of the other big thing that we're thinking about. If we did let Judge go, Jason Dominguez, who's DH'd through the early stages of his career, would step right into right field for us, and we'd kind of patch together DH most likely. You can see we've already made offers to Dominguez, Shu, Luis Funky Cole Medina, and Jeff Hackinson as far as some of our arbitration eligible players. Some of those are just one-year deals. In the case of Dominguez and Shu, Dominguez is a one-year offer. Shu we're trying to sign for a little bit longer. He's obviously been a revelation for us in left field with just an awesome offensive profile since he came over. You can see he had a 126 OPS plus in the 2028 season, which was by far the worst season he has had since coming to the majors from Taiwan. So still unclear as we start free agency whether I'm really going to try to get under that $190 million. I think a lot of it depends on what we do with Judge. If we do give him the qualifying offer and he accepts it, it's, I think, impossible for us to get under 190, and we'll probably just then spend money and try to make management happy by winning rather than making them tons of money. If we decide not to give a qualifying offer to Judge and or he doesn't accept a qualifying offer, then we could possibly get there. The big hole we have, although Minaya wasn't starting for us, would certainly like to potentially add another starter, as we always try to. And then both Josh Hader and Josh Taylor are free agents, the veteran lefties, and they're really the only two lefties that we have in the bullpen now. So I'm going to need to add some type of left-handed pitching. The only minor leaguer we have is Evan Goodwin, a league average type pitcher. Does have flexibility to potentially start or relieve for us, so there is value there. He was our seventh round draft pick back in 2024. The issue with him, though, is he's really no better against lefties than he is against righties. So although he's a lefty, he doesn't give us that arm that can really potentially shut down a left-handed batter more effectively. So he could certainly see some time with the major league club this year, but I don't know that he's a adequate replacement for either of the Joshes, Taylor or Hader, is a left-handed pitcher. But adding some lefties to the bullpen and possibly a starter is what we'd like to do through either trade or free agency. And then, depending on what we do with Judge, may need to add another outfielder, although we do have a few decent outfielders who could certainly be a fourth or fifth outfielder, pinch hitter, part-time DH at AAA that we could bring up. The issue with losing Judge is that then with Shu, Bellinger, and Dominguez, we'd be real strong across the outfield, but we're, opening up a hole at DH, and our backup outfielder will be a little weaker than we've gotten used to. Also have a decision with Miguel Andujar, obviously along with Judge, has been with the Yankees as long as anybody. Still a, positive hitting profile, although awful eye, not going to walk much, if at all. And then just, doesn't offer much of anything defensively except for some modest versatility and being able to play a bunch of positions in a pinch. He's fragile. The positive thing is he's only looking for about $1 million and a half a year, so we should easily be able to come to an agreement with him and fit him under whatever our salary constraints are if we do decide to bring Andujar back. And then thinking broadly about those salary constraints, as I mentioned, management wants us to get to 190 from 205. We're fifth today. Getting down to 190 would probably move us more to 7th, 8th, 9th, maybe 10th in player payroll. They're still giving us a crazy high budget, though, $342 million, second in the game behind only the Dodgers. So given that they want low payroll, but they're still giving us a high budget, we're bumping our development budget up from $32 million to $36 million. We're already maxed out at $24 million with our scouting. So even if we do the $190 million, we're going to spend a little bit more of ownership's money on player development. You can see the system has slipped back a little bit, 9th overall out of 30 systems. We did also make a little bit of a change to our scouting as we got ready. We had been 36% international scouting. We bumped it up to 40%. Our relatively new scouting director is excellent with international, but that's actually a downgrade from our previous scout. So we're hoping that bumping up our international scouting budget a little bit in conjunction with his excellent international scouting will hopefully allow us to find some more players like Jose Montoya and Uricio Castillo. We've done a really good job over the past 7 seasons of finding international players and signing them who have decent potential. That's been really the biggest part of building our minor league system is up to what it is today, even more so than the annual international free agent budget. It's been scouting discoveries that have really driven a lot of our top ranked prospects. So that is kind of the high-level overview of what I think we want to do and what we want to accomplish this offseason. We'll be checking in to let you know when we do something interesting, and then we'll also check in to see if the Yankees win any of the big offseason awards that will be coming up over the next few weeks. Well, we're a couple days into the off season, and we have at least temporarily gotten under the $190 million that ownership wants us to spend on payroll. We declined our option year for Sean Manaea, so he's going to be a free agent. Tried to trade him, but no one had any interest in him no matter what. So that says it all. We were able to trade away Sean Murphy to the Rays. Got a minor league reliever, Steve Royce. More importantly, we got Blake Casson, first baseman. You can see he's a left-handed batter, looks perhaps like a slightly positive offensive profile with decent home run power, can really only play first, left, or maybe DH. Well, obviously DH. The thought is, though, that he could potentially take on the Miguel Andujar role if we don't bring him back. Clearly not as much defensive versatility as Andujar has, and that he's absolutely not a third baseman, even with the weak arm that he has. But as a left-handed bat rather than a right-handed bat, particularly if we end up letting Aaron Judge go, felt that Klassen potentially had a little bit of value at the major league level. Unfortunately, he is out of option years, so he'll have to be going through waivers if he doesn't make the 26-man roster, but a borderline roster player for the Yankees who may have a little value in the upcoming 2029 season if we do decide to proceed with a more austere budget regime. And we are actually going to trade away our young second baseman, Alexander Vargas. You can see he's off to a nice start in his career with us, but at best a league average hitter in terms of his actual skill, and our scouts are pretty good, so we're confident that that's pretty accurate. He's a good defensive second baseman, but looking to make $4 million this year. As I mentioned, we don't have a left-hander in the bullpen right now, and Seattle offered us Luke Wagner for him. Great stuff, good control, 2 great pitches, and a good changeup. So the makeup is really strong. He's a lefty, just heading into arbitration, expected to make about 1.2 to 1.5 million this year. The concern is obviously his movement is not great, and he's an extreme fly ball pitcher. So he's probably going to give up a fair number of home runs. That being said, if you look at his first 3 seasons in Seattle, has had a ERA plus, better than the league average every season. The last 2 seasons, he's had a FIP minus, a little bit better than league average. We need a left-hander. We need multiple left-handers in the bullpen, and while we can potentially pay for one of them in free agency, particularly if we take Vargas's salary off the books, I think Wagner is a pretty cost-effective way for us to get another lefty into the bullpen. Also throwing in Angelo Huerta for Boston Bateman, 2 kind of lower-level prospects, both left-handers. We're giving up a starter in Huerta, but he doesn't have a great work ethic. Not sure that he's ever going to develop. Bateman is a reliever, but a potential lefty reliever for us, down the line, who maybe could help with the big club. So we're going to pull the trigger on that trade too, which will open up even a little more money for us. And apparently Luke Wagner is a popular player, so positive there that the fans are pleased that we brought him on. He's from Pennsylvania. Not really sure why the Yankees are all that excited about him as fans. I guess the thing is he is a flamethrower with 348 strikeouts in 258 innings at the major league level. So in terms of strikeouts, 99 walks, and we talked, he's also probably going to give up some home runs. He's good at generating those true outcomes as a pitcher. Well, we've been able to avoid arbitration with a lot of our key young players. Luis Medina, Jason Dominguez, and Jeff Hackinson all signed 1-year extensions, so we're avoided arbitration with them. Even more importantly, Shiku Shu, we got signed to a longer deal. He had 2 years of arbitration potential left. You can see we signed him to a 5-year contract, annual salaries of 18 going up to 20, 22, 24. And then we have a team option in the 5th season for him at 30 million. If he plays the way that he has over the first 4 years of his career, we would certainly be picking that up. But he'll also be, in his mid-30s by then, so it gives us a little insurance. He was looking for a 10-year contract at similar numbers to that for us, with player options and player opt-outs. We're pretty surprised he went for it at this level, but happy to have him on board, anchoring our batting order for the next 5 years. What to do with Aaron Judge is becoming the big decision of our offseason. Probably not surprisingly. You can see with the moves we've made, we have gotten potential payroll below the $190 million that ownership wants us to be at for this coming 2029 season. I know that in the whole scheme of things, if we're at $250 million with the Yankees and we win a round in the playoffs, they're not going to fire us, but if we just kind of stay under this year, then they'll probably leave us alone for a couple years. So there is some value, I think, to just getting them to leave us alone so we can really go crazy with the salary the next couple years. I mentioned that Judge, we can submit the $18.9 million qualifying offer for him. Oh, sorry, that's Lasaiga there, who we're going to let go. I wonder if Judge's request has changed at all. Still in that $16 million area. I guess the other thought is we make him a 1-year offer for like $15 million or something, which he's probably not going to accept, but that would be better off than giving him the $18.9 million. And even if we pay him that amount, that would push us up where we would just kind of need to make a couple moves to get back under 190. The guy who potentially is in jeopardy if we do sign Judge but still want to get under 190 would probably be Pavin Smith with his $5 million contract. Can see had kind of a down year. He's now going to be 33 next season. Maybe a slightly average offensive profile. Good defensive first baseman, in terms of his ability to play the position. His skills aren't off the charts. But with the addition of Klassen, similar offensive profile, not as good batting average most likely, but more power. Certainly not as good defensively, but that's not hugely important. We plug in Klassen and we can save, about $4 million if we were to trade Pavin Smith away. And then the easy solution would be to just let Judge go. And then that would let us head into free agency with, several $1 million, about $7.5 million to potentially use to bring on a stronger left-handed arm to join Luke Wagner and, maybe pick up a starter off the scrap heap in a couple of months. So that's the big decision we got to think about. There's part of me that, I don't know, maybe I'm following the rules too much. I know that I don't really need to be under 190, and they're just going to complain to me in an email as long as we have a good season. But I did kind of like it the last few years when we had met their first salary and profitability target, and then they just left us alone, and we went crazy with the spending, and they never said a word. That was a nice way to operate, which was kind of the traditional Yankees way to operate. Well, we're trying to give Judge the Derek Jeter treatment, I guess. We just offered him only 1 year and only $12 million, and he's thinking about it. I thought he was going to be offended, and we were going to have to go a little higher because he was looking for $81 million over 5 years, so averaging a little over $16 million a year. And if we, extended him a qualifying offer, that was going to be $18.9 million. So maybe it's a little bit of a glitch in the game that he's willing to play with us for $12 million. Doesn't mean that he's going to agree to it or not, but if we're able to get him in at $12 million, we can probably get under 190 next year if we want to, and still have him on the roster, which would be a win-win for us. Well, we're still waiting to hear back from Judge on that low offer that we made to him, but we're through awards season. Won one Gold Glove. Cody Bellinger got the Gold Glove in center field. Daniel Salas was the reliever of the year in the American League, which was nice. You can see we did sign Wagner to an extension, just a 1 year, just voided arbitration with him. Silver Slugger, also one of those. Bo Bichette, mixing up Cody and Bo in the way I'm speaking, but had a real nice first full season for us. Happy to have him on board. Rookie of the Year, we're not involved. Manager of the Year, we're not involved. Cy Young Award of the Year, Cy Young Award. We did have a third place finish there with Jeff Hackinson. 3 first place votes, but well behind Garrett Edwards, who was 14-6 with a 3.07 ERA for the White Sox. And then most valuable player, Jose Aquino of the Orioles, runs away with it, unanimous. And when you bat .348 with 53 homers and 156 RBIs, yeah, that's the kind of season that wins a unanimous MVP award. Bichette was 4th, and Bellinger was 5th in the voting as far as the Yankees, though. So hopefully those two can continue to produce as they move on in their 30s, since we have them both locked up for another several seasons. And Aaron Judge is going to be back. $12 million a year. I guess he really wanted to stay with the Yankees. He's fragile, as we've talked about, but he made $30 million last year, so taking the pay cut to $12 million to position himself again in right field. I think it's a great move for the Yankees. It does kind of put us on the wrong side of where ownership wants us to be, but you can see we're only about $5 million above their payroll target now. So we can potentially get under the 190 and still bring Judge back, which I view as a big win for us. From Judge's perspective, the interesting thing with him this year, not exactly what it meant 30 years ago, but with 381 career homers, if he stays healthy, hopefully he will be hitting his 400th home run in a Yankee uniform sometime early summer. So we will see how that goes and keep an eye on that when the 2029 season starts. But it's November 26th, and I think we've done a lot of our heavy lifting for the offseason, and we certainly have done basically all of our heavy lifting for the offseason if we're going to try to remain under that $190 million salary cap. And we've decided that we're going to go economical this year and try to get under the $190 million payroll target that management has for us. So we are trading away Pavin Smith, as well as a minor league left fielder, Adrian Jimenez, who we had to throw in just to get it to where we wouldn't have to pay any of Smith's salary. Getting a minor league closer from the Dodgers, Mike Algrin. You can see he's out with a torn rotator cuff. Profiles that, if his stuff and movement both get to the level that they think they could get at, could be a useful major league reliever. But no guarantees that he's going to make it. But completing that trade, the big part of that is that it gets us back under the payroll target just barely. You can see we need it to be at 190, and that has us at 189, 586, 500. So what the roster actually looks like when we get into the spring, will probably be, a few million more or a few million less. So no guarantees that we're going to make it, but the opportunity to kind of bring Judge back and still kind of hopefully make ownership happy so they back off for a couple years and we can just spend like crazy. That's what we're going to try to do. Means we're not going to be able to add a big starter in free agency. We're not going to be able to add another good left-handed pitcher in free agency. So we're going to kind of have to piece those things together. The top of the rotation with McCullers, Javier, and Benbrook, still really strong. Hackinson, certainly not a traditional starter, only going five innings a pop, but he did start for us last year. And then Josh James is a free agent, probably won't be back with us. We haven't made him an offer, so he certainly won't be back with us unless we change something. So Luis Medina would probably slot in as our fifth starter right now. So not the depth in the starting rotation that we've gotten used to ever since we took over as general manager, but we may just have to try to piece things together for this one season and then hopefully still make the playoffs and then try to spend like crazy and pursue a championship next year. Or the season after. Obviously, we're still pursuing a championship next year. $190 million is still a payroll that the vast majority of teams in baseball would be happy with. So our goal is obviously to win it all, but we're potentially not hitting it quite as hard as we've tried to the last several seasons. So as we're getting ready for arbitration and free agent filings, there's not really much left for us to do. We signed all of our arbitration-eligible players except Nick Gonzalez to one-year contracts, with the exception of the long extension for 5 years we signed Shu to. So not going to be much going on there. Gonzalez, he was looking for more, so we're offering him $1.35 million. We'll see where it comes in. He has been a backup for the last several seasons for us, so hopefully that will save us a little bit in arbitration this year, even though we are kind of turning over second base to him with the trade away of Vargas. Looking at the pending free agents, Andujar's been, actually all of these players have been with us a long time, but Andujar the longest. Hader and Taylor, the lefties out of the bullpen, Manaya, and then Lasaiga. So taking a bit of a hit to the pitching staff, letting all of these players go, but the money they're looking for is just not what we want to be paying guys who are in their mid-30s. And then Bogarts, Josh James, as I talked about relatively recently, both of them going away. Tyler Mahl out with a torn UCL, certainly not going to be looking to sign him to the type of money he's looking for. And then Jake Rogers, who helped us out when there were injuries last season, is also going. So not going to be a crazy free agency period for the Yankees this year. Going to largely be sitting it out. Be interesting to see if we can pull off a trade or something to maybe open up a little bit of money in the payroll. But when we're looking at our roster right now, there's not a lot of obvious things that we want to change. The big money is there. Bichette, Bellinger, Judge. We could look to trade Ke'Bryan Hayes potentially, but he's a great clubhouse influence. Still a pretty productive player. McCullers and Javier at the top of the rotation aren't going anywhere. Shu we just signed. Alvarez we signed for his final arbitration year. Murakami, when he's healthy, is still a good guy to have. And then other than that, Dominguez, who we signed for $5.1 million, bought out this arbitration year. Hackinson, we signed for $5.8 million to avoid arbitration. There's not a ton of guys that we'd be inclined to move. I think if we were to do something to get more ambitious in free agency, it would probably be with Ke'Bryan Hayes, but I don't really want to let him go. Not a great hitter, does have the kind of doubles power that is a little unique in our lineup. Not great home run power, but captain, great influence in the clubhouse, great defensive third baseman. But offensively, he's been about a league average type hitter while we've had him. So there's certainly an argument to get that $20 million salary for next year off the books. If we were to do something, it would probably be letting Ke'Bryan Hayes go. But if we're going to do that, we probably got to decide quickly, because if we do go in that direction, it means that there's a slim chance that we might want to bring Miguel Andujar back. Good bat, not much defensively, but can play third for us in a pinch. Certainly wouldn't want him to be an everyday third baseman for us. But you can see over the last 4 years, 3 of which we've had Ke'Bryan, his usage has just plummeted. absolutely, the 25th or 26th guy on the roster the last couple of years. Certainly, if we let Cabrian go, we'd be seeing more action for Andujar if we brought him back. I just can't help myself. I'm going to keep shaking things up, I think. I think I'm going to trade away Cabrian Hayes. We're going to have to retain 10% of his contract if we trade him to the Mets, which, as you can see, we have him signed for several more years, so it's going to be a couple $1 million a year that we're going to be responsible for. But he has agreed to get rid of his no trade clause. He's going to be 32 years old next year. Great defensive third baseman, but kind of an average bat. I think we're paying him too much, and I think we gotta, you can see hasn't been an all-star. His last all-star appearance was 2025 with the Pirates before we traded for him. To get them to take Cabrian Hayes, we're also going to have to give them Aiden Solis, who was our 5th-round draft pick just a season and a half ago. Right-handed starter. You can see, potentially profiles as a very average major league pitcher. He's durable, only 22 years old, so doesn't feel great to have to give up Solis. All we're getting back is Caden Wallace, kind of a average reliever, could potentially start for us in a pinch. He was the number 1 pick of the Mets 5 years ago, but he's 27 years old and he's never played in the majors yet. So, he's kind of a replacement level arm similar to Solis, but a lot older than Solis. So would certainly think that, we're losing that end of the bargain also. But this will give us a little opportunity to actually potentially add a left-handed arm or a starter in free agency, which we felt like we needed by getting $18 million off our books. And then the other thing, if you've been paying attention, this isn't going to surprise you. But the other thing this does open up for us is potentially thinking about bringing back Xander Bogaerts for another year to play third base for us. You'll remember, we've been thinking that each year was his last year with us for several seasons now. But if we can get him at a, about half of what we were paying to Cabrian Hayes, and that's not going to be simple, because you can see he's looking for $13 million for 4 years. We're going to want him to be more like 8 or 9 or maybe $10 million for 1 year, so we can try to do what we did with Aaron Judge, with Bogaerts, but that would give us a pretty good defensive third baseman who's going to hit about probably as much as Cabrian Hayes did for this next season, and then we'd still have a little money to potentially invest in a left-handed pitcher or a starter as we do approach free agency. So we're going to complete the trade. It may be something we regret down the line. Fans are shocked that we traded him. Players are disappointed to lose the leadership, but we still have enough capable captains on the team. Fan interest, loyalty, still astronomical, but you can see we're down to 8th in payroll at $171 million now. So we now do have flexibility to potentially be a little bit active in free agency. And like I said, I think that Bogaerts is not as good defensively as Cabrian, but he's still a plus defensive third baseman potentially. And he's a different kind of hitter, but probably not quite as good as Cabrian Hayes, but not a huge drop off. Let's just see live how he's gonna react when he goes from looking for 4 years, $52 million to $8 million. He's still gonna be upset with, but let's see what his reaction is. We're on the cusp. Knock it down to 1 year and $9 million, and then other than that, I think we'll just let him hit free agency, and then he's gonna think about it. Now we've only got a few days till free agency filing. So hopefully there's enough time for him to potentially agree to come back to us for that $9 million for next year. But he would slot in right as third base, and with the loss of Ke'Bryan Hayes, even with keeping some of his contract, we'd still be about $8 or $9 million better than we are right now to have a little bit of money to play with in free agency to, as I said, add a lefty reliever and or a starter to kind of complete our roster. And Bogarts is signed. Going to be back with us for $9 million next year. Has some MVP and All-Star bonuses. I think it would be unlikely that he would pick up either of those at this stage in his career. But good defensive third baseman, really strong arm, good in the clubhouse, and kind of an average major league hitter. Again, I think Ke'Bryan Hayes is better. Although if you look at their OPSs for last year, the 114 that Bogarts put up was better than what Ke'Bryan did. But, to save close to $10 million and kind of get out of Ke'Bryan's contract, which has potential to be a relatively bad contract in 3 or 4 years, I think. We had to do it, even though we had to give up a good prospect also. So now we are potentially heading into free agency with about $10 million to spend. So it gives us a little more flexibility to hopefully improve some of those last positions on the roster and maybe find a steal, in February or March in free agency if there's a good starting pitcher that a market hasn't materialized for. So we're at the start of free agency now. Payroll of $178 million. So we've got a bit over $11 million that we could potentially spend. Looking at the pitchers, looking at everybody right now, but thinking about the pitchers, DeGrom is only looking for $9.5 million. It's just that he's fragile at this point. You can see pitched only 2 games last season. The year before, though, he did lead the National League in wins with 18 and ERA, WHIP, 224 strikeouts. I'm guessing that was a Cy Young Award winner for him. Yeah, he won his 5th Cy Young Award. Wow. He would be real interesting to bring on. I mean, he's 40 years old. He's fragile. Probably not the direction we would end up going, but clearly the most interesting option out there among the starting pitchers. You can see the rest of the highly ranked pitchers are pretty much entirely relievers until we get down to Matt Allen, who is also fragile and looking for $7 million. But there are players with enough stamina that they could certainly slot into the starting rotation if we wanted. The 2 big lefties that are out there are our former guys, Josh Taylor and Josh Hader. So probably going to have to be going down a notch to find the lefty reliever right here. Orberto Arrieta, 25-year-old. Wow. He's doesn't look like he's ever played above A ball. Yeah, he's never played above A ball. He is a lefty, though. That would be a bold move for us to pay him $2.7 million a year to go from A ball to the majors. So not a lot of good options for lefty pitching. We may need to try to do that in the trade market, find someone a little more economical. But, if DeGrom kind of lingers on the free agency block for a while, maybe he'll be something to do, but I tend to think at that age, with the injury proneness coming off of another injury season, probably not the direction that we're going to go. So pretty underwhelming options as far as free agents, at least in terms of starting pitchers. So we may have to go to the trade block to kind of find whoever we're going to add to the rotation this offseason. But given that we've got a pretty good minor league system, hopefully we can do that. And now we do have some money, so that if someone is looking for a salary dump of a lefty reliever who's making $6 or $8 million that they really can't afford, we can now fit that in under our budgetary constraints. Well, we may be ready to do something else that's crazy. We were looking for lefties that we could trade for, and we kind of found Tony Guajardo in Atlanta, 24-year-old, nice pitching profile. He's got the stamina to be a starter, but he's definitely a reliever with his fragile injury proneness and in the fact that he really only has 2 pitches right now, although the slider could become decent at some point, but a little better against lefties than he is against righties. So he would have filled that role for us nicely, with a young player who's under control. The issue is that the Braves were looking for Marcus Trimmel, who's one of our top prospects on our team and one of the top prospects in the game. Number 42 overall, as you can see, was our 4th-round draft pick 4 years ago. He played this last year in AAA, had a 125 ERA plus, 93 FIP minus, struck out a ridiculous 256 batters in 143 innings. So he has just incredible stuff. I mean, you can see he's got 80 stuff, and he's also got 4 incredible pitches. But his movement and control are always going to be an issue. Don't like that he's not much of a leader, not much of a work ethic, but he's obviously an incredibly valuable player. Wasn't necessarily willing to give him up for Guajardo, but then I decided to just see what could we get if we traded away Trimmel. And in the White Sox would offer us Garrett Edwards, who he has 5 pitches rather than 4. Now his pitches are not as nasty as Trimmel's, and his stuff is not as nasty as Trimmel's, but his movement and control are so much better. He's got good work ethic. He's already a proven major league starter. I mean, granted, his first year in the majors was, rough with a 4.42 ERA and a 160 FIP minus. But last year he led the American League in ERA. He's going to be 27 years old, making the minimum right now. He's going to get a big bump likely next season. It'll probably be higher than that if he has a decent season. But I kind of feel like with us needing a starter, it's time to leverage our farm system and trade away Trimmel. I mean, the stuff that Trimmel has is just incredible, as you saw. I mean, literally almost striking out 2 batters an inning as a starter last year in AAA. But Garrett Edwards, doesn't cost us anything in terms of salary and slots in with a good young starter into our rotation who's not injury prone yet. I kind of think we have to do it, even though we're kind of trying to manage our payroll to that $190 million amount. We're still going to have one of the top 6 or 7 payrolls in baseball. We still want to win now. We're going to do it. I'm guessing we're probably not going to be able to get too much else from them, but let's just go see if maybe they'll throw in a random reliever. Omar Cantu here, 2-star potential. Oof. Doesn't look like he really has much of a future, but would they even throw him in? Yeah, they still would. All right, I'm going to dig around a little more. It's possible that Trimmel is so good that we can get something a little more meaningful back from them in addition to Edwards. And recall that we are on, we're in challenge mode, and we've also bumped up the difficulty on trade setting from challenge mode a few notches. So I don't feel like we're just ripping off the AI here. We're certainly, given an incredible prospect. It's just that I'd prefer somebody with better control in my rotation. All right, I think we've got an agreement with the White Sox. They are going to add in Luis Ortiz, who is a left-handed reliever prospect. You can see he's not ready for the major leagues today, but as you know, I'm always looking for lefties for the bullpen. In a few years, he could be one for us. And then Ju Hyun Lee, who is, a middling prospect. You kind of wonder what the White Sox are doing, but Trimmel is an incredible starting prospect, number 42, and you can see 256 strikeouts in 143 innings at AAA as a starter. So his stuff is just nasty and his pitches are so good, but I know that movement and control is going to annoy me, and also I'm trying to win right now and I don't think he's ready. But look at what the White Sox pitching staff is going to be in a few years. I'm trading them the number 42 prospect in baseball, a starting pitcher, 23 years old. They also have Wilnie Kellner, a 22-year-old who's the number 2 prospect in baseball as a starting pitcher. Nelson Leyva, a 22-year-old lefty who's the number 18 prospect as a starting pitcher. Jimmy Turner, who's the number 19 prospect in baseball, a 23-year-old soon as a starting pitcher. And then David Diaz, who's the 32nd prospect in baseball as a starting pitcher. So the White Sox are going to have 5 starting pitching prospects that are all ranked among the top 42 prospects in baseball after this trade. So their rotation is going to just be potentially historic in a few years. So we're gonna have to be competing that in a couple years down the line. But until then, I think it's all the more reason for us to try to win now, because that rotation is just incredible. So we are going to bring on Garrett Edwards. Trimmel, it's been nice. Best of luck with the White Sox. Ooh, we traded for an MVP. I saw that Edwards had won the Cy Young Award. I didn't realize he was actually also an MVP. Maybe they're just considering the Cy Young Award the pitching MVP. But regardless, Edwards is on the team now. The fans are excited, and we've got our starting pitcher. Well, that ended up taking us down quite a rabbit hole. You can see we're back, still trying to trade for Guajardo. We would love him as a lefty reliever, but Trimmel was literally the only player on our organization that Atlanta would trade straight up for him, which is kind of crazy. So I think he's probably going to be a little too expensive for us, but it is what it is. Certainly very happy to add Edwards to the rotation, with McCullers and Javier, and then Ben Brook coming off of an injury-plagued season. That makes us feel a lot better about the rotation with those 4 fronting it. Hackinson probably will also be in the rotation as kind of a guy who goes 5 innings, and then Medina right now will be our option if we have some injuries, which if you've been watching this series, we certainly will. Well, Trimmel, although he wasn't the top-rated prospect in our system, clearly was viewed as the most valuable, because just trying to get Guajardo from the Braves now, they'd require Uricio Castillo, who's the 27th ranked prospect in baseball, lefty starter, was one of our scouting discoveries that I was talking about earlier. Durable, certainly, has not been productive in the minors yet. You can see a 5.57 ERA in A-ball last year, but still has potential to become a really good starter for us. So we certainly wouldn't trade him straight up for Guajardo. And to make the deal work, they'd also want either Ben Brook or Edwards, who we just traded for. So we're certainly not going to be adding Tony Guajardo to our team last year, but at least trying to think about getting him got us thinking about trading Trimmel, which we ended up doing, and it netted us Garrett Edwards. So we're back in win now mode, even though our payroll's a little lower than it has been for the past few years. And we're starting to make a little progress here in early December. We just got left-hander that we were looking for, Richard Lovelady from the Nationals. Can see a veteran, but really nasty stuff against left-handed batters, which is what we want and what we need. High work ethic. He's signed for another 3 seasons at around $3.5 million a year. So hopefully he will be able to fill that role for us that the Joshes were filling out of the bullpen with his lefty arm for the next few seasons. Had to give up a decent shortstop, 23-year-old prospect Mike Blanco, and then a minor league reliever Trevor Long to get the deal done. But we are going to go ahead and complete that trade, add a little salary to the team, but we're starting to round out the rotation with the addition of Edwards as a starter, and now Lovelady as a left-handed reliever for us. Well, we've made a minor free agent acquisition, signing first baseman Ryan Mountcastle. Modest contract, $4.5 million this year, 4.6 next year, and then we have a team option for the third year. We're really just trying to get him to a 1-year deal, but he will give us a little bit more offense at the position and be a little bit better defensively. He's also a right-handed batter. So looking at our roster, my hope is that Scott Leius will platoon him with Blake Klassen, as you can see, a left-handed batter, also a decent batting profile, but a weaker defensive first baseman. Right now, our backup kind of utility infielders are Volpe, who's certainly staying since he can play every position reasonably well defensively. But the thought is that we'll send Eric Becker back down to AAA this season. You can see he's not as good an offensive player as Mountcastle. He is really good defensively, but I think the hope is that Mountcastle will ultimately start against left-handed pitchers and have Klassen start against right-handed pitchers. Would be my hope making the acquisition. We'll see what Scott Leius thinks. It also gives us a little more flexibility at a designated hitter if a Judge or a Bellinger or a Shue needs a day off and Dominguez ends up in the outfield. Mountcastle, I think, is a little bit potentially better bat who could be seeing some time as DH also. And it seems like I can never get the managers to do what I think makes sense. Leius has put Mountcastle in as our starting first baseman in his proposed lineup against lefties, which is what we wanted, but also against righties, which I just don't really understand at all. I mean, Mountcastle is definitely better defensively than Kassin, but just look at these ratings against right-handed pitching. If you're just going purely by the numbers, 55, 50, 60, 45, 45 for Mountcastle, whereas Klassen, 55, 50, 65, 55, 60. I mean, Klassen just seems like he is clearly a better hitter with more power, better eye, better at avoiding strikeouts against left-handed pitching. It would seem like he would be a logical person to put there. He's obviously bad defensively. My hope was that, Mountcastle could be a late-inning substitute at first base for him. We'll see what Leius decides when we ultimately get to spring training, but a bit frustrating that I have still not found a manager who can execute on my perfectly crafted plans as general manager. And with the Mountcastle signing, you can see that our player payroll is up to $187.3 million at this point. We're trying to keep it under $190 this year to keep ownership happy and hopefully get off our backs. Feel pretty good about the way that things have come in with the trades we've made and the re-signing of our own players and now kind of adding Mountcastle. I don't think we have as much organizational depth as we used to, and if we do have some injuries, I don't think AAA is as strong as it used to be, but I like the way the roster is feeling now as we're at the beginning of February. We'll see how spring training goes, see if we suffer any injuries, but I'm feeling pretty good about the team, particularly because it's a team that was put together to kind of meet the payroll goals that ownership had for us this season. All right, we are at the end of spring training. Made it through relatively injury-free, which is great. Looking at the roster, we've got to send Kerner or Siegler down to AAA. Siegler is a switch hitter. Think he's slightly better, so unfortunately that means Kerner is going back to Scranton Wilkes-Barre. Siegler's going to be the backup this year. Becker's going to go back down after the acquisition of Mountcastle, so that's a pretty easy decision to make to send him down. Hopefully he can work at maybe playing third base and improving his ability there. Jose Montoya was in camp, one of our top young prospects. You can see the number 9 prospect in the game, scouting discovery. Has not hit all that much at AA yet. Probably will put him at AAA this year. He's going to turn 23 this season. Still has some work to do, in terms of his contact and his home run power. But looks like he can be a solid defensive shortstop, given that we've got Bichette signed for several seasons, probably going to work on training Montoya up to play some other positions, but probably going to end up at AAA for at least the beginning. 2 final cuts to make. Sam Thompson is a backup center fielder for us. If Bellinger had some injuries, he's probably the second best defensive center fielder we have, but we don't need him there on a day-to-day basis. And then the last cut, probably going to be Anthony Garcia. You can see here, does have real nice power, a corner outfielder, switch hitter, so he has some value. He does have 1 option year left, though, and that's what's going to send him back down. The other option was Chase DeLauder, also a nice, league average type hitting profile, but for a backup outfielder, certainly fine. Left-handed hitter. Can play all 3 outfield positions. Actually did play a little center field in spring training, and he kind of moved from a 35 to a 40 as far as his position rating, which is helpful. But DeLauder is out of option years, and that's ultimately going to be the key determinant of why he gets to stay as the 5th outfielder, and Garcia will be headed back down to Scranton. So there is the 13-person roster, or 13-person batters, not the entire roster. Obviously, we're going to have another 13 pitchers. And looking at the pitchers, we've still got 19 in camp. Need to send some down. Eric Upton pitched a little bit with the Yankees last year with a 5 ERA. Going to send him back down to Scranton for the start of the season. Evan Goodwin, we've talked about, looks like about a potentially, maybe if we're lucky, a league average left-handed arm. Send him down to Scranton Wilkes-Barre also. Javier Ramos, similar story. He may need to go through, nope, doesn't need to go through waivers yet, so that's good. Starting to get into some of the more difficult decisions now, so I'll give them a little thought and then circle back and let you know who the final 3 cuts were. All right, back to thinking about pitching. 2 of the final cuts were pretty easy. Uricio Castillo is the number 27 prospect in the system. Talked about him earlier in this episode. Still has great potential as a left-handed pitcher, but hasn't been above A ball. So we are going to tentatively send him to high A. He may end up in AA when we go through the entire system after we're done with the episode and kind of organize that ahead of the season. Grant Holman, can see looks like could be a slightly above average reliever for us, and also has enough stamina that he can fit in as a spot starter, but he still has 3 option years available, so we will send him down to Scranton. And then the final one was tougher. Came down to Alex McFarland. You can see his profile is probably a little worse than Holman that we just talked about. He can start for us in a pinch if we need. Has been up and down the last couple years. Actually spent all of last year with the Yankees, kind of a league average type pitcher, 102 ERA plus, 108 FIP minus, a WAR of almost 1 for us. He's out of options though. The other option was Tim Wallace, who we think is going to be a really nice reliever for us. Drafted him out of Stanford, 4th round, 2027. He's progressed rapidly through the system. Pitched to a 4.50 ERA in 25 games at Scranton last year after doing somewhat better in Somerset. Still has some work to do to kind of get his stuff up to the full breadth of his potential, and also could add a little bit to his fastball and his splitter. So we are going to send Wallace down and keep up McFarland for the time being. I think Wallace is probably a better pitcher at the major league level than even McFarland right now, but Wallace has options. McFarland doesn't. We're going to have injuries at some point relatively soon to the pitching rotation without a doubt. So at that point, I would think that Wallace would be one of the first ones back up. So he will get some major league experience this year without a doubt. So looking at our potential roster as we break training camp, similar to previous seasons, despite all of the off-season activity, Bichette going to be leading off and playing short. Gonzalez taking over for Vargas at second. The middle of the order with Shu, Bellinger, Dominguez, and Judge, the same as it has been for the last several years. Mountcastle going to be at first base. Again, I don't understand why Leas is not playing Klassen against right-handed pitchers, but he's my manager, and I've got to live with it with the way I'm playing this sim. Alvarez at catcher, and then Bogarts at third base. Pretty much exactly all the same people in the lineup against lefties. It's just Bogarts moves up in the order significantly, and then still have the middle with Shu, Bellinger, Dominguez, and Judge. Just kind of move Gonzalez down, move Bogarts up, and Alvarez slots back a little bit against lefties. Leas is kind of trying my patience, though, because looking at the pitching rotation, I don't know where he came up with this, but Leas wants to go with a 6-man rotation. You know, just don't be weird, Scott. Come on. So I don't know if that means we're going to need to have a 14th pitcher up on the major league roster at some point, but you can see the top of our rotation with Edwards, Javier, Benbrook, Hackinson, and McCullers is going to be loaded. I mean, it's hard to believe that he's slotting in McCullers at number 5, but you look at all of those guys, and they're all, 3.5 to 4.5 stars. They all have, with the exception of Hackinson, pretty solid stamina. I get if you want to put one of the few lefties we have that we just brought on to be in the bullpen. With his 60 stamina, I can kind of understand if Leas wanted to start him instead of Hackinson. Don't love it because it only leaves us with Lovelady as a lefty out of the pen. But with this wacky 6-man rotation anyways, we're still only going to have one lefty out of the pen. So I don't know if that means we're going to have to ultimately make a trade for another lefty arm out of the bullpen, or if this is just, whatever Leas is thinking right now, whatever reason he wants a 6-man rotation. So that's kind of a weird twist as we head into the beginning of the season, but we will live with it. Can always take Leas's job away from him at the end of the year if I'm not happy with what he's done. He has done a nice job with us so far. Obviously made the playoffs 4 straight years with him and won that World Series back in 2026. But, doing weird stuff as far as his coaching was what led me to move on from Boone 4 seasons ago. Now, I don't love what Leas is doing as far as the platoon situation at first base, and also just don't feel any need with the amount that we've invested in our top pitchers to be diluting what we can get out of the front end guys like McCullers and Javier and Benbrook and Edwards by going with a 6-man rotation. So the seat for Leas is getting hotter with the wacky stuff he's doing, but it is what it is. He's the manager. He's got that discretion. I am only the general manager. So thank you so much for watching. You can see that our goal was to get under 190 million in terms of our payroll. We're now 10th in baseball heading into the beginning of this season. Still feel like we should absolutely be a playoff team. Hope to win the AL East for a sixth straight season this year. And then if we do that, let's hope that we can go do some damage in the playoffs. We do have a little bit of money to play with if we want to bring on someone around the trade deadline. If their team is willing to retain some of their salary and just get a little bit off the books, we can still hopefully remain under that 190 million payroll goal that ownership has, and then emerge in next off season with kind of a blank check, so to speak, as far as what we can spend. So thanks so much for watching. If you're enjoying the series, would appreciate it if you subscribe and like these videos, and would love to hear your comments on some of the decisions we made down below. Always enjoy the discussion. Thanks so much for watching.